Não agora está ao vivo.
Boa tarde a todos que estão aqui aguardando desde as 3h30 para assistir a live com a nossa special guest, Liz Gill. Parece que ela teve problemas com a conexão. Infelizmente, ela até o momento não conseguiu entrar na live para discutirmos esse filme que é tão famoso, né? O Goldfish Memory. Então, já estávamos todos apostos, ready to discuss the film and to say something about our reading of the film, but unfortunately, she couldn't come, and this is life, the unexpected. So, in this pandemic time, good afternoon for everybody, for my students, scholars, friends, and family, and good evening to our friends in Ireland, those who could come and attend this chat. And bonsoir, mon ami à Paris. Thank you all for coming and join us this afternoon. So in this pandemic time, we proud ourselves in create a different experience online, either to celebrate Irish events or to discuss about Irish culture, Irish literature, Irish films, Irish novels, poetry, etc. So today you are ready to have a chat with Liz Gill, the director of Goldfish Memory. But so far, she hasn't come yet. So Sanio, my post-graduation student, my post-graduation advisee, is here with me. And he's writing his thesis on Irish films produced after 2008, period known as post-Celtic Tiger Island. And Sanio is the person, he has promoted these contacts with many key figures of Irish films, Irish literature, Irish poetry, etc. So besides Sanio, I also have a group of scholars who are all the time with me, helping with the events that we organize together. So, and they are also reading texts on Irish literature, Irish plays, Irish films. So they are not present, but they are with us in the backstage, let's say. So I have to share with you my experience when I first watched the film. The film was launched in 2003. I think it was 2003. But the first time I watched the film was in 2008. Before watching it, I had seen many Irish films, many historical Irish films. For example, Ryan's Daughter, I believe you are familiar with, 1970, My Left Foot, 1989, Michael Collins, 1996, In the Name of the Father, 1993, Bloody Sunday, 2002, And the Wind That Shakes the Barn, 2008, and also a few adaptations of Irish novels and plays to the cinema. Watching these films made me note that Irish filmmakers commonly rooted their films in their nation's history, culture, and literature. The impression I had when I watched Liz Goldfish Memory was that she had produced something completely different from what I had seen before, not only in terms of content, but also in terms of narrative structure and cinematic techniques. The other aspect that called my attention was the use of Brazilian songs to compose the film soundtrack. Also, I may confess, I felt a bit nostalgic when I recognized a few places that I have visited in Dublin, such as Trinity College Library, where I did my doctoral research, the Leafy River, you see, people crossing the bridge from one side to the other of the bridge, and a few other places in Dublin. It seems Liz film provides an amazing Dublin city tour. This is another aspect that attracted me most in the film when I watched it for the first time. As a literature professor, I realized Liz film could help me illustrate my lessons on many aspects of theory of narrative and questions on identity in the post-graduation and undergraduation programs. It's unbelievable how my students enjoyed watching the film and how many essays they produced about it. I
Indeed.
particularly wrote an article on Goldfish Memory and published it in a Brazilian journal. Sanio also followed me and wrote an essay for a journal too. I believe most of you who are following our chat today may remember how I was in love with Goldfish Memory. And for those who haven't watched the film, I try to say a few words about it. It's a comedy about connections, collisions, and upsets between men and women. Its characters are not restricted to modern cinema's depressingly formulaic genre of rom-com roles. The film focuses on a variety of folks, Dublin's straight and LGBTQ plus communities without conforming to stereotypes, who move through relationships with a goldfish-like 3-second memory span and constantly make the same painful mistakes. In addition to this, the film also explores the possibilities surrounding global democracy in terms of speed, volume of cultural communication, and integration. In short, it reacts to a diversity of cultural outputs and values. I can add something more about the film. Uh, it's my reflection when I watch the film. Many followers of contemporary cinema may observe that Irish filmmakers commonly root their films in their history. But Goldfish Memory is different, as I said before. And the film Goldfish Memory, written by Liz Gill, is a warm-hearted film of contemporary mores and identities. It's a romantic comedy, and she also presents the world is not divided up neatly into particular distinct cultures. It's not that we are without culture, but we are drawing on the traces and residues of many cultural systems. There is something artificial and absurd about attempts to preserve and keep intact tradition. We need attachments, but each person has a multiplicity of options at their disposal. We need to stand outside them, to reflect on them, and to dispense with them when they are no longer necessary. This is a few words written by Stuart Hall in his book, Postmodern Times, Questions of Identity. No?
Liz Gill is already here, Noélia.
Is she? Wow.
Yes,
Brilliant.
she's already here. Okay.
Okay,
just to let her know. So just let's welcome her.
Right. So I have to well, I cannot see her yet. Okay.
No,
Hi there.
she. Hello, Liz.
I'm so sorry. I just missed the last words that you said, but before that, what an incredible, kind, generous description of the film that I would really love to make someday. That's very,
So
very
could you hear
kind.
what I said?
I could. I was thrilled. I'll be having a great month now, thanks to such kind words. Really, I really
Yes.
appreciate it. And I'm so sorry for being late. My own Goldfish Memory had me in a different day, so I apologize, but it's great to be here with you now. And I'll be on video shortly. I'm just almost back at the house.
Okay.
Okay. So what I said before, Liz, was my experience with Goldfish Memory. The first time I saw the film, I was so impressed that I wanted to share with my students. And I used the material to teach two different subjects, to teach theory of narrative and to teach identity in postmodern times. And it was a very good experience because my students enjoyed so much watching the film and discussing about the film that many of them wrote articles and about different aspects of the film. For example, the structure, the narrative structure, plot, and time, the characters, lots of aspects they explored in the text in your film. So it was really a very good experience. And Sanio and me also, we wrote in different times an essay about your film. So today you are here to say something about your experience in producing films. And later, after your words, Sanio is going to interview you. Sanio has a few questions to make. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you so much. I'm really so honored. It's just amazing to think of this little tiny film reaching an audience so far away and such an astute audience as well. I think it's a very incredible analysis that is really a great honor, I suppose, to any filmmaker to be considered so deeply. So thank you for that. It's great to be here.
So, Lara, can you? Yes, there you go. So, Liz, I've got a few questions for you. I know you're still trying to turn on the camera, but I would like to start just with a few questions. We had an interview before. It helped me a lot with my dissertation. So firstly, I would like to ask you about your journey. We all know you have a lot of experience. You started as a director. You've been a producer. You wrote films too. But I would like you to share a bit of the details of your journey and how did you actually start with filmmaking?
Well, like probably many people, I knew I wanted to work in film, but wasn't ever sure how to get there. So eventually I think it's very common experience that it company in New York, and little by little was then lucky enough through an accident that it was in the same, another job was in the same building as Martin Scorsese. So I was lucky enough to get a job in his office for a while, and then, which was incredible, and then moved into production, always wanting to write and direct, but of course, you know, it's not possible always to start there. So the production experience has always been very useful, and I suppose it's relevant to this film in the sense that it was the case of having to write something that we could actually be sure that we could deliver without a big crew, without special effects, without any money, frankly. Indeed. Just something nice and low budget is kind of how it arose. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know how much detail you want me to go in of the very early days.
Well, I think that's quite enough. There was a recent article on ARIS Times. Okay, now we can see you.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. There is an article, and the title is, "Does Irish film industry have a problem with women?" I don't know if you read this article, but they mention you. You are mentioned as a female filmmaker that is established in the country. So I would like to see what's the importance of Goldfish Memory in your career?
Well, yeah, as I think you mentioned earlier, we made it in 2003, and what it offered was a TV directing career. So I'd been, you know, kind of knocking at the door for a long time. I made a film in 1996 that was pretty terrible, with no offense to everybody involved, and I just couldn't get any work as a director. And so Goldfish Memory then demonstrated to a degree, it got me in the door anyway. And for a number of years after that, I worked on TV drama here at RT in Dublin, which was great, but it means you're not going to make any more films while you're working in TV, you know, so it's a trade-off.
Okay. Is this a I think a story with me in, right? You wrote this one. A story with me in.
Oh, A Story with Me in It. Yes, that was a documentary series, actually.
Okay.
So there's been a number of both drama and factual series.
Okay, great. So, as you said, the film was released in 2003, and it's a story featuring same-sex couples. Okay, I know some LGBT plus groups said after they watched the film that it was not gay enough. Okay, so but what was your message for the audience?
Well, yeah, we got a bit of flack because the distributor chose not to premiere it in the Dublin Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, but always the intention had been to make a film that wasn't particular to a niche. You know, I really wanted straight people to be able to see it and enjoy it, to get a little window, because sometimes gay films, now again, 2003 is a different time, but sometimes gay films get slotted into a particular zone and are never seen by anyone else. And if we're going to understand each other, we have to spend time in each other's worlds, you know. And even now, I think, and well, now people are fluid, and it's all a little more, you know, yeah, generally flexible. But you know, I still would wonder, is it a gay film or a straight film or something in between? You know?
Yeah, that's what I keep asking myself too every time I watch it. Another question is, I remember that in our first interview, you said that you wanted to represent Ireland as a place to go and have fun, right? You said that. But now, after the Celtic Tiger, after an economic crisis, and now going through the so-called Celtic Phoenix, what has changed in Ireland since Goldfish Memory?
Well, we had the marriage referendum, which was fantastic. So
2015, indeed.
Yeah, which, and again, as you know, what was so special was it was something the whole country voted for. You know, it wasn't just a legislation, and it was really moving, I think, to the whole gay community, how passionately the whole population, except for one county, but people were really motivated for equality in an active way. I mean, people really came out to vote. They came home from England and other places. It was a really passionate kind of movement. I think as much for equality, and also for people to be able to say, we're not in that old church world anymore. Like, we can imagine a new future. And it wasn't just the young people. It was really a whole kind of national movement. So that's changed. I mean, the whole Celtic Tiger thing, you know, turned very sour. But until just before the pandemic, people were kind of moving right back into that same, you know, bubble mentality. So it's, I suppose, you know, to look, if I watched it today and thought, oh yeah, you could, you know, go to bars and nightclubs and kiss and great, you know, it's right now, it's obviously a very different world. But, and some of the things I suppose are dated. I mean, we were very conscious making it that it was capturing a very particular moment. And I was surprised, I don't know, it's been a couple of years now since I watched it, but I was surprised that it hadn't dated more, that it didn't look more period and completely ancient, because that's what I expected at the time. It was very much that moment then. But I think there's a general, I think Irish people still want to have fun. Even in the pandemic, our problem is people keep talking about opening the pubs. You know, you think, well, we have different priorities, surely, but that's the big conversation. So hopefully the urge to have fun will always continue, even if we have to close the pubs.
But let me ask you something. It actually came to my mind, a couple, a specific couple. This is an extra question about Larry and Rosie, because like Larry, when they go to meet Rosie's mother, she says, okay, just do not tell her that you're not Catholic. And then when they break up, he does not openly say that he's breaking up with her because he doesn't want to be, you know, he doesn't want to be, you know, he'll leave his beliefs behind, because as I understood, he's probably Protestant. But I would like you to talk a bit more about this couple, because it's funny, because not many people that analyze this film talk about this couple. And I think it was a very interesting, you know, situation.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's one of those things that is still happens even today. My sister got married not so long ago, and there was definitely a degree of disappointment in his mother that it wasn't going to be a big Catholic Church event. I don't think it would necessarily. Well, I suppose if he said, you know, I have to get married in a church, that could have ended the relationship. But I don't think it's the kind of issue that's going to end a relationship. But what you do see it happening, I suppose, is when people do have kids. And, you know, the national school system here is still almost entirely run by the church. So I personally wouldn't be comfortable sending my child into that system. And sometimes those conversations happen only when there are already children, needing to go to school. There are some Protestant schools and there are some non-denominational schools, but in the countryside, you really have no choice but a church school. So it's even though we don't, it's not really talked about anymore. It's definitely something that it's still an undercurrent of society and hasn't been addressed.
Okay. Another question is about a non-traditional family. In Goldfish Memory, there is a very unique family that, in my point of view, it's made of Red, David, Kate, and Angie. Like, how did this happen? Like, how did you create? What do they represent, actually?
I mean, I suppose, again, in 2002 or before that, this kind of family was nowhere near as common a phenomenon as we might see today. Now, they weren't necessarily, I have to confess, it wasn't, in terms of representation, it wasn't probably as philosophical as it could have been. It was really more a punchline for the way the symmetry of the story, I suppose. So any implications are lucky or accidental, I suppose. I mean, I did, when I was just before we started shooting, I kind of said to myself, oh my God, I've just invented this fake, what about this gay bike courier? Like, does that exist? And then I was thinking this, worrying about this in the park. And this guy walked by who was a bike courier who is dressed almost exactly like he was scripted. So I said, okay, well, yeah, it can happen. It's real. I mean, it's a very kind of romantic, happy ending. I would love to think that kind of family would just be happy ever after. I think it can be quite complicated, but that's for the sequel.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to talk about IFTA. You got 2 nominations there, right? But I would like to talk about Juanita Wilson. She got the prize for Best Director. You have worked with her in Tomato Red. And there is also Aislinn Walsh that she just won in 2018 with Moldy. But the thing is, all the other winners are men. So how do you feel about that?
Well, it's a natural result of the few female directors, so there's such a small proportion of women directing that it translates into the awards inevitably. This is a battle that that actually Susan Liddy and I are on a committee with Marion Quinn, another Irish filmmaker, trying to, and things have changed a little bit since Me Too, and now there is definitely more of a commitment from Screen Ireland on recognizing that there was a problem, because for many, many years there was a huge problem that wasn't even being acknowledged. So at least people are finally paying attention. I think there's still a huge problem, frankly. It's slightly differently expressed in that, there are more women directors, but what are they directing? They're directing soap opera, they're directing the low budget stuff. And again, we get today an announcement of Olivia Wilde is going to direct a big Marvel movie, like, hooray. But these kind of splashy headlines don't really speak to the day-to-day working of the industry, I suppose. So we're a long way still from 50-50, and doing everything we can here, at least, to address that. But the unconscious bias is still alive and well, and the thing that I guess is a little depressing is my father sent me recently. There's an article in an old newspaper from 1874 about my great-great-grandmother was fighting for the suffragette vote. And that's really wonderful, and they got the vote. But it said towards the end of the article that they were fighting for equal pay for equal work. And I just thought, oh my God, 1874 and 2020, we're still having this conversation. Like, please, let's just fix it.
But it seems that the Irish Film Board, now they are called Screen Ireland, and they are trying to support more projects directed by women. How do you feel about that? Do you think it's enough? Do you think there is more that need to be done?
I think they're doing a really good job, and I know they have a serious commitment to 50-50. I know Annie Duna, the head of the chief executive, is seriously committed to it, and the project managers are all working very hard. I think they're kind of doing everything they can. I think that we're trying to see introduced into we have a very generous tax incentive program here, and we're trying to get that to at least examine the gender balance, not just of directors, but of the whole crew. But one of our biggest problems is our national broadcaster, because the TV is where there's two things. One is the TV channel, who are so broke, but nonetheless don't hire 50-50 enough, and have a very bad history of hiring foreign directors as well instead of Irish. But really, also, now again, with the pandemic, this is slightly different, but the biggest problem we have, and I think it's international, is commercials. So let's say you're a female filmmaker, you go to film school, you make an amazing short, it could win an Oscar. Where do you go from there? If you go straight into making your first feature, most people's first features are really bad, because you're learning, because it's an incredibly technical set of skills, very, very different skills. So even Martin Scorsese's first feature was not good. It was called Can You Hear Me Knocking, and they buried it. Like, everyone says, oh, it was Mean Streets, because that was a good film. But so the world of commercials is completely off limits to female directors. If you're a guy and you make a great short and it gets Oscar nominated, like any of the successful male directors we have here, like Lenny Abramson or Paddy Brannock or Conor Horgan or anyone you want to name, Kieran Walsh, they all spent their time between college and their features making commercials. And commercials are great education. You get really big tools. You make very, very short stories. You have to communicate really clearly and manage and do everything. It's a wonderful postgraduate education. And there are zero commercials directors who are female. There's one Irish woman, Aoife McCardle. You may know of her. She's an amazing talent. But it's where so many great talents hit the block and don't get to continue after that. So if we could ever find a way, I know the commercials market at the moment is dying and maybe things are reinventing, but that's something that isn't acknowledged, because the corporate people who are making the decisions in the end have this image of what a commercials director looks like, and it's a really hip guy, who can have drinks later. It's a very anyway, that's my rant.
Well,
Thank you.
okay, so there's another question. Actually, there's another question that came to my mind, but I'd like to ask you this one first. It's about the way the films are being done in Ireland nowadays, because I've some authors that study Irish cinema, they say that an Irish film is supposed to have an unexpected conclusion. Okay, but it seems that these films nowadays are much more similar to Hollywood than in the Celtic Tiger period, for example. Do you think that the Irish filmmakers are trying to follow Hollywood standards, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think we've always looked to Hollywood for kind of instruction, and a lot of the times the films, it was not that they were particularly radical, it's just that they weren't succeeding in following the Hollywood model. Now I think we have this really global emphasis on script editing, from Linda Seeger onwards, these kind of formula mechanics of this is what a script should look like. This is the story. Every Screen Ireland film has to have a script editor, and the script editors are normally, of course, their job is to break it down along those kind of formula lines. So the films that often try to take the risks don't necessarily get the support either that they deserve, you know. I mean, and this is one of the things that goes back to the kind of male and female filmmakers is, you know, one of the great things about Lenny Abrahamson is that he has made a lot of films in kind of different styles, and is continually supported. So he can make a film like Frank that worked for some people, didn't work for, it's a mixed, and Little Stranger didn't quite find the audience it might have expected to, but yet he's still going to go on to make his next film and his next film and his next film. It's through that practice that, so that kind of support, and I think belief in talent is what will lead us to more interesting work, especially now because audiences themselves are bored with conventional, predictable endings, I think. So it would be great if we could be a little more imaginative, like the Neil Jordan school of kind of, let's try something different.
I'm very glad you mentioned Frank, because this question is mostly about that. It seems that Irish filmmakers are leaving Ireland to tell stories in other countries. For example, Papichulo from John Butler. And actually, this was a very good surprise. I was watching with my husband Modern Love. And I was happy enough to see that it's in New York, and it was inspired by essays of New York Times journalists. But it's a film by
John Carney.
John Carney. That he was the director of Once and Sing Street. So it was so interesting because when I watched the story, it felt Irish. It was absolutely not in Ireland, for sure. It was in New York. The characters, none of them, not even the actors, were Irish. But there was something that it reminded me from the aesthetics of the Irish films.
It's funny, because Kirsten Sheridan is also a director on this series, I think, who is a close colleague of John Carney. They worked together. They had a wonderful place called The Factory where they really tried to support Irish emerging artists. So I have to confess, I haven't seen any of Modern Love. I have it on my list, but I'm looking forward to seeing the sensibility. John has a lovely touch of the bittersweet.
It does. Okay, that's it. But some of my colleagues are going to ask you some questions. Okay.
Yeah. Great. This is another stage of our chat today. We have students. They are not going to be here, but they send questions because they are looking forward to hear your answers.
Amazing.
Okay.
Rosilaine. Yeah. Do you want to read the question or shall I just answer? Is it okay?
Okay, you can just answer.
Okay. I actually loved that translation because it made perfect sense. In fact, it could have been, the tagline under the title. It seemed to really capture the kind of sensibility of it, and also what you were alluding to before of the kind of that various preferences or orientations are just colors of the same thing is a nice kind of approach, I think.
So it's better, Sanio, to read the questions because we cannot see the questions here.
Okay, so hi, this question is by Fernando. Let me just try to, because my eyes are very bad. I have to see it now.
I can read it if you want.
Okay, it would be better.
So he says, hi, the interconnection between storylines in Goldfish Memory is fascinating. Information is told in very intricate and not always linear fashion. what made you want to tell the story this way? That's a great question.
Yes, yes.
I get, because I guess again it comes back perhaps to this gender balance issue. You know, I spent so long trying to write the hero's journey, you know, the conventional linear, you know, this is your goal, this is your obstacle, blah, blah. And I just couldn't do it. So I just thought, well, I can't write if that's what it is. And then I had read the story La Ronde, or the play La Ronde, that goes from one character to the next, the next, the next. Actually, they did try to make a film of it. And I liked this circular structure. And so the first version of the script was literally going one character to the next to the next. What didn't quite work about that script was that I felt like by the time you got to the third or fourth person, you're kind of losing interest, because you know you're not going to stay with them. So they're just almost temporary. So it became a case of trying to still kind of let them interweave, but that it's actually going in a more circular form than the straight line, so to speak. And I'm sure there's all sorts of kind of, you know, interpretations one could make of that, but it just felt more comfortable to me. I felt like that was a form I could connect with rather than be
I think it's much more interesting, because activate the audience mind. They are supposed to connect one piece to the other and to understand the whole.
Yeah, it's something I enjoy also in, sometimes they get it right in TV, but in the big novels, you know, when you'd be reading these different characters and kind of wondering, how are they going to come together? There's like you say, like the reader gets to participate, let's say, or make some connections in their own mind.
And the answer that my students gave at that time, when they watched the film, they analyze under the light of postmodern times. If you consider that individuals have their identities fragmented, so the film mirrors those individuals, fragmented identities. You know?
Wow, very interesting.
Yes. Next, Sanio.
Okay.
Lara.
We see that there has been an effort to highlight female directors' works nowadays, and the number of women in this position is still low when competing to men. In that sense, what were your main challenges during your career, especially back in 2003? Would you give any advice to aspiring female filmmakers? Yeah, so I'm going to talk about it some more then, if that's okay. I mean, the main challenges in the career, the reason I kind of stepped away from directing was I just got sick of getting nowhere, frankly, because, you know, it was great to make the film, again, for micro budget, against, with a lot of resistance. And then, yes, it was great to get the TV work, but it wasn't really like great TV. And I kept getting rejected for screenplay applications, and I just kind of got, and all around me, I was watching the guys, my contemporaries, getting further and further and further and further, like a John Carney, for example. Like, I'm not, he makes a great film, but look at him now, you know, and the career path for me and the other women, we were still in the same place, watching the guys go like superstars. So it got very demoralizing, and I said, forget it, I'll do something else. And I got kind of lured back in then to producing, which is a different story. But so my advice now would be to anyone, in fact, not just female filmmakers, but the thing is to just keep making the work. And nowadays, I think it's great because you don't have to make a whole feature to get noticed. You can make a 30-second film, and you can keep making them. I mean, no one can stop you now. You have a camera on your phone. The Adobe Premiere Pro is there on a computer for quite little money. You can edit it. You can broadcast it, and to just keep doing it, because every time you do it, even if no one likes it, you're getting better, and it takes practice. This is again my point about the guys get the practice. be it commercials or just doing lots of work. Whereas, of course, if you only get a chance to do something once every 5 years, you're not going to be as good at it as someone who's doing it every day. So that I would just say, keep making it, whether it's 30-second films, 3-minute films, 10-minute films, whatever it is. If you keep doing it, you'll get better. And sooner or later, you'll find your audience who enjoy what you're doing. Okay. From Lara, Goldfish Memory brings up themes that are still relevant now, even though it was released in 2003. Non-heteronormative constructions of family and feminism, for example, are aspects that can be observed within the plot. By then, how is the popular and the critical reception of a film that touches such themes? It was funny. I mean, in Ireland, it actually did surprising. It was very similar. There was a film that came out at the same time, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Well, at least you film scholars, called Intermission. I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, it got a prize.
Farrell. Yeah. So those two films came out at exactly the same time and were similar enough. I mean, obviously they had a bigger budget, but it was also kind of an ensemble. And we were received in a more or less the same way. You know, it was so no one was making a big deal about the homosexuality, heterosexuality, whatever, other than our queer community friends who were complaining about it.
That's surprising.
What was surprising was there, like about 10 years ago, yeah, it was probably, so sometime right about 10 years after it was made, like it was shown in a film festival in Vannes in France. And I was saying to the organizer, oh my God, this is gonna be so out of date. Like really, it's old now. But actually the audience was it was very relevant, because in France, the whole notion of, you know, different kinds of families was still a very hot topic for discussion. So it's, I don't know why in Ireland there's a certain degree of kind of live and let live, or not. We don't have the same kind of anger around homosexuality or race that you see in other places, and probably because we're so used to being the oppressed. So we tend to almost relate, you know, it's a post-colonial thing. We side with the person, the victim, perhaps, but that wasn't any issue around the reception of the film here anyway. And I like to think nowadays it's more or less normal everywhere, though I'm sure, you know, if you go to the States, that's a whole nother culture.
Okay, I think no more questions. Sanio, do you have more questions?
No, I don't think so. I think that was quite enough. Thank you so much. You are an inspiration for me. I actually started watching Irish films, and because of Goldfish Memory. Like Goldfish Memory made me interested in Irish cinema. Okay, so thank you so much. Like it's not for me. You always say, like in our first interview, you said that again. It's a little film. It's not a big of a deal, but like for me, it's just fantastic. It's probably one of my favorite Irish films ever, and it opened a lot of doors for me.
Wow. Well, I'm so honored, because really Brazil is a place that's so close to my heart, and obviously we love Brazilian music. We went there 4 times. Like it's so special, and it feels like Ireland and Brazil are so far away. So it's really. So I'm just so thrilled and happy that to connect, you know, across the ocean. It's really, I'm so grateful to you both for bringing it to the world there.
And I believe if you were not living this pandemic, you could come now for the seminar in São Paulo. I think Laura has already got in touch with you. Invite you to come for to share.
Oh my God, I would come immediately. I would come.
Okay, next year, I hope so.
Oh, I'll come back to you about that. It would be incredible.
Yeah,
Thank you.
We are going to organize other seminars and symposiums, and I'm sure you'll be coming next time.
I hope so. That would be
You-
wonderful.
Yeah, I don't know if you have already met Jessica Trainer.
I know the
poet.
name. Oh, no, yeah, no, don't know.
No, she came in March, a few days before the
Oh.
pandemic. So we are glad that she could come and talk about his poetry book. And we translated her book of poems that
Wow.
and launched it in March before the pandemic.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I'll definitely look for her then, because I'd love to read her
Yeah.
work.
So we have many plans for the future. I hope you could come and join us in different events, Domesday Day or St. Patrick's Day.
Well,
We are
likewise, I
always
hope you will come.
celebrating- Yes, we are always celebrating Irish events. So I hope you have
Amazing.
the chance to be with you in Brazil
I
sometime.
hope so too. And I really look forward to also welcoming you both to Dublin. We'll do the Goldfish
Yes,
Memory
yes.
tour.
Oh, that would be awesome.
In fact, I was ready to go to Ireland after St. Patrick's Day. And I
Oh,
had to cancel my
Oh,
trip
no.
to Dublin. So anyway,
I'm so sorry.
I'll go next year.
Yes,
Hope-
please.
Hope the vaccine comes to
Yes.
solve our problem. Okay,
Indeed.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Liz.
Okay.
Thank you because you were so generous. Sanio is always in touch with you, making
Oh.
this contact.
No, it's a pleasure for me.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you.
My
very
pleasure. Thank you. You too.
Okay,
Okay.
bye-bye.
Okay,
See you
bye-bye.
soon.
Bye.
See you
Bye.
soon.
Great. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.